What are the types of companies? There may be private company, public company, statutory company, government company, holding company, subsidiary company, etc. So let us quickly understand what are the different types of companies. Let us go through a couple of features of each of the important kinds of companies. Statutory company. A statutory company is a company which is formed under a particular statute, under a special act. Like, for example, the LIC Act. You have the Life Insurance Corporation, which was formed under the LIC Act, or the RBI Act, under which the Reserve Bank of India was formed, or the Food Corporation of India, National Highway Authority of India. These corporations, these companies are called statutory companies, which were formed under a special statute, under a special act of Parliament. The accounts of these companies are audited by the Controller and Auditor General of India, the supreme auditing authority of the country. So, a statutory company is a company which was formed by a special act of Parliament. It could be the Food Corporation Act, the LIC Act, the SBI Act, etc. These are called statutory companies. Next, let us understand what is a government company. A government company is a company in which the government holds 51% or more of the share capital of a company. Which government holds? The central government or the state government? Or partly a state government and partly central government. Partly some state governments and the central government. So totally the government, whether it's the central government or the state government, should have at least 51% share of the capital of the company. In that case, it would be a government company. Also, any company, if it is a subsidiary of a government company, any company, if it is a subsidiary of a government company, would also be a government company. Who are the auditors? The auditors are actually appointed by the Controller and Auditor General. Some examples would be Air India, HMT, NTPC, etc. are some of the examples of government companies. So a statutory company is a company which falls under a special statute, a special act, a company which was formed in accordance with a special act. The accounts are audited by the Controller and Auditor General of India. In case of a government company, 51% or more of the share capital must be held by the central government or one or more state governments. And their audit is conducted by auditors which are appointed by the Controller and Auditor General. Next, what is a foreign company? A foreign company is a company which is incorporated outside India but has a place of business in India. The company which is incorporated outside India but has a place of business in India. Examples could be Coca-Cola, maybe McDonald's, Pizza Hut, whatever, etc. A registered company, a company which has been registered under the Companies Act 1956 or the New Companies Act 2013. Companies have to be registered because companies are incorporated entities. So they are always registered entities. A subsidiary company. A subsidiary company is a company which is actually controlled by another company. The other company is called the holding company, and we are now defining a subsidiary company. So let us say we have a big company, a holding company, a small company, a subsidiary company. The holding company controls the small company or the subsidiary company. Now, how would control be exercised? If the holding company controls the board of directors, it is the holding company which decides on who the directors are to be, on the appointment and retirement of directors. So basically, the board of directors is controlled by the holding company. Then it would mean that the company which is being so controlled is the subsidiary company. Again, if a company, the holding company, a company holds 50% or more of the share capital of the company, then this company is called subsidiary company. So suppose you have company A which holds 60% of the capital of B, then B company is a subsidiary company of A company. Similarly, if A company controls the constitution of the board of directors, it is company A which is responsible for the appointment, retirement, etc. of the directors of the B company is then a subsidiary. Now suppose A company holds B company and B company holds C company. That means A has more than 50% share capital of B and B has more than 50% share capital of C. Then C is also a subsidiary of company A. C is also a subsidiary of company A. So it is a subsidiary of a subsidiary. Similarly, if there is a subsidiary of a foreign company, whether or not these conditions are satisfied, as long as it is called a subsidiary of a foreign company, it would also be considered as a subsidiary in this country. Therefore, when the composition of the board of directors is controlled by a company, or 50% or more of the share capital is held by a company, this company is called a subsidiary of the other company. Similarly, if it is the subsidiary of a subsidiary, it also becomes a subsidiary of the first company. Any subsidiary of a foreign company would also be considered as a subsidiary even if these conditions are not satisfied. And what is the holding company? This other company which controls the capital or the composition of the board of directors of the other company is called the holding company. For example, Tata Steel, TCS, Tata Motors could all be subsidiaries of Tata Sons Limited. Next, we have something called limited liability company and unlimited liability company. Usually, companies are limited liability companies. It is one of the distinct features of a company that the liability is limited to the amount of capital being invested by the owner. The liability is therefore limited to the unpaid amount on shares. What is shares? Shares is a portion of the capital. The total liability that any owner would have to incur in case of a company is limited to the amount of capital that he has decided to invest. If he has paid up the entire capital, there will be no further liability from him. If as happens in case of companies, only part of the capital is being paid up, not the entire amount. An investor who wanted to invest in so many shares of a company pays only half, which is due on the shares of the company. He may be liable for the remaining half. That is the only liability that he would have. So the total amount which would be lost by an owner could be only the amount that he invests as capital. An unlimited liability company is a very special case, not very common. But in this case, the liability is not limited, and the owners of such a company may have unlimited liability and may have to contribute at the time of liquidation if there are not enough funds to meet all the liabilities of the company. It is incorporated, but the owners have unlimited liability. This happens in some special cases where the owners want to maintain secrecy about their financial statements or transactions, or when they want to show that their creditworthiness is higher because they have unlimited liability. However, I repeat, such kind of unlimited liability companies are not as common or as popular as the limited liability companies. They are formed only in some special situations. So in an unlimited liability company, basically, liability of the members is not limited. They may be personally liable for the debts of the owners of the company may be personally liable for the debts of the company. As a result, a lot of the restrictions of the Companies Act do not actually apply to an unlimited liability company. Different clauses in the Companies Act, the unlimited liability company gets exemption from several clauses of the Companies Act. This is because the owners have themselves said that they would be personally liable for the debts of the company. This is usually an unlimited liability company is formed to maintain maybe secrecy of the transactions or to show the creditworthiness of the company because the owners are personally liable for the debts of the company. But I repeat, unlimited liability companies are few, and an essential feature of a company is the limited liability. The name of a company could sometimes show whether it's limited or unlimited. The liability of the company is sometimes revealed in its name. For example, Infosys Limited, or Tata Sons Limited, etc., indicating that these companies have limited liability. A private company. What is a private company? A private company must have a minimum capital of 1 lakh. A minimum capital of 1 lakh. It has a restriction on the number of members. The maximum number of members was 50 as per the Companies Act 1956, and it has been increased to 200 as per the Companies Act 2013. So there is a restriction on the number of members and also a restriction on the transfer of shares. Which means if 20 people have formed a private company, these 20 people, they are the owners of the company and they cannot transfer their ownership to another person easily. They cannot do so until consent of all the other owners is available. It is not easy to transfer ownership in case of a private company. So some of the features of a private company is that the minimum capital should be 1 lakh. The number of members is restricted and there is a restriction on the transfer of shares. One example of a private company could be Flipkart Online Services Private Limited. As against a private company, what is a public company? A public company is a company which is not a private company. It should have a minimum capital of 5 lakhs. A subsidiary of a public company is also a public company. So if it is a private company but it is a subsidiary of a public company, it is called a public company. The basic feature of a public company as against a private company is that there is no restriction on the transfer of shares. The shares of a public company are usually listed on a stock exchange and easily transferred. So if I own a part of the capital, a share of the capital of a public company, tomorrow I can transfer it to X, Y or Z. There is no restriction on the transfer of shares, and usually the shares, what is a share? A share is a portion of the capital of a company. These are listed on what is called a stock exchange. A stock exchange is a market where the ownership of these public companies can be transferred from one to the other. A listed company, a company where any of its securities, any security, debenture, share, these are the securities, any security, if it is listed on a stock exchange, would be called a listed company. So all public companies are listed companies because their share capital, their capital can be easily transferred amongst people and their shares must be listed. So all public companies are listed companies, but a private company may or may not be a listed company because any of its security could be, any one of its securities could be listed and then it would be called a listed company, but it could continue to be a private company. A quick recap of the kinds of companies that we discussed. One is a statutory company. What is a statutory company? A company which has been formed under a special act. SBI Act, LIC Act, FCI, Food Corporation of India Act, etc. The audit of such statutory companies is done by the Controller and Auditor General of India. What about a government company? A government company is one where 51% or more of the capital is held by government, the central government or the state governments, or together. 51% or more of the capital must be held by central or state governments. So the government company is a company, at least 51% of its share capital must be held by the governments, the central government or the state governments. The balance may be held by other financial institutions, may be held by the general public. What is a foreign company? A foreign company is a company which is incorporated outside India. Incorporated outside India with a place of business in India. So that would be a foreign company. What is a holding company and a subsidiary company? The holding company controls the subsidiary company. How does it control? It has more than 50%. It owns more than 50% of the share capital, or it controls the composition of the board of directors. Similarly, if it is a subsidiary, if A holds company B, or B is a subsidiary of A and C is a subsidiary of B, then C would also be a subsidiary of A. And any subsidiary of a foreign company would be called a subsidiary in India too, whether or not the other conditions of a subsidiary company are satisfied. So that is a holding and a subsidiary company. A registered company, companies are incorporated bodies and they have to be registered under the Companies Act. However, a company may be a limited liability company and an unlimited company. Usually, company has limited liability, that is, the owners, their liability is restricted to the amount of capital that they invest. They would not be personally liable for the losses or the liabilities of the company. An unlimited company is a company where the liability of its owners is unrestricted, unlimited. They would be personally liable for the liabilities of the company. So in case of an unlimited company, the liability of the owners is not limited. And since they are personally liable for the liabilities of the company, the restrictions imposed on them as per the Companies Act is also limited, because the owners themselves have decided to be personally liable for any liability of the company. The Act exists, the Companies Act exists largely to protect the interests of the shareholders, since there are a large number of shareholders and ownership and management has to be kept separate. So management of a company is normally in the hands of a different entity and the owners may be different. However, in case of an unlimited liability company, the owners have agreed to be personally liable for the liability of the company, for the loans, the debts of a company. They therefore do not have several restrictions, or they have several exemptions. They get several exemptions from the several clauses of the Companies Act. A limited company or an unlimited company may be again a public company or a private company. A public company, what is the difference between public and private company? A public company has a minimum share capital of 5 lakhs. A private company has a minimum share capital of 1 lakh. The minimum number of persons in case of a public company is 7. In case of a private company, it's 2. The maximum number of persons in case of a private company is 50 as per the old Act, 200 as per the new Companies Act 2013. And here, of course, there is no limit to the number of owners. Upper limit to the number of owners. The basic distinction between the two is that there is a restriction on the transfer of shares. Restriction on the transfer of shares in case of a private company. The members have to agree amongst themselves in case any owner wants to transfer his ownership to somebody else. So the basic distinction, distinguishing feature between a public company and a private company is that there is a restriction on the transfer of shares. In case of a public company, ownership can be transferred. The shares of a public company are listed on a stock exchange and the owners may change by the day. As per the Companies Act 2013, there is also a single person may also form a company. This is a special kind of company and it is called an OPC, or a one-person company. This is a new feature of the Companies Act, New Companies Act 2013. This is in brief the kinds of companies, different types of companies and their important features.